Well, hey, I want to make sure I just give a quick, it's okay to leave if you have to leave. Like some people have said that, like if you're slipping out, it's no big deal. If you're on your phone though, I'll be very angry. I'm just joking. I'm just kidding around. Well, hey, I jokingly, when I do Q&As at our church, I call it a Q and Shay. So there you go. But I did want maybe just way of introduction, and I want to let you ask whatever questions. I brought some of the books that I think were in the pack. I haven't seen what you guys have, but I want to just give a couple word and show you some books. I believe the world belongs to those who read. The world belongs to those who read. I'm stealing that from another pastor friend of mine, but I've just become more and more of a reader since actually after college. But these are, I think, some of the best books that I know of right now that I'd recommend. So here's what I talked about my TechWise life. Here was the other book, the TechWise Family. And so young people, this one's geared towards you, written by a teenager. And then this is her dad that wrote those two books. Those are recently published. Parents, everybody needs to read this book. 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You by Tony Reinke. Tony works for John Piper at Desiring God. He is probably, I think, the Christian leader right now on technology and the gospel. Tony Reinke's got another book coming out in 2022, which I'm excited about. It'll be his third book on technology, but this is the one. You guys need to read this book. A lot of what I said today is actually probably reflected in this book, so check that one out. Here's a book that was written like 30 years ago that could have been written yesterday. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. He is not a believer, but this book is phenomenal. That's what I can say to you. It's really about television, but about just the way we entertain ourselves. And then lastly, this is a guy by the name Justin Earley who wrote a book called The Common Rule, which I think is a terrible title for this book actually, but Habits of Purpose for an Age of Distraction. Some great things in this book about just ways you can change your day and really just remove distractions from your life altogether. I really appreciate he is a believer. It's just really great biblical worldview, but wanted to give those to you. All right, questions. I don't know if I'll be able to answer everything, but I want to be as helpful as I can be. Comments, anything. I'd love to be able to be helpful. So, how can I serve you? What kind of ways can I be helpful? When are
you going to let your kids have fun?
Yeah, this is the question I get. I was ready for that one. Every parent asks me, they always say to me, hey, when's the youngest? And then I always say, how long can you wait? I take a pretty low-tech, as you can imagine, I take a relatively low-tech view in my home, even though we do allow our kids to do some things. My wife and I have talked about 16 would be, but listen, I'm not saying a smartphone right now. I'm saying a dumb phone at 16. So, and I don't care what happens in the next, 6 years, 5 years. I really do believe in like a kind of what I call like a stair-step way of introducing technology to my children's lives. So like to slowly allow certain things. Like I never let my kids just hang out on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like we don't do anything like that. Everything in my house is pretty much password protected, including our Apple TV that we use to watch stuff. But it's funny, I didn't grow up with a television. So I'm like, I have this weird like background where like I just didn't have a TV in my home. And I learned how to play guitar. I learned how to do graphic design actually on a computer that my dad had gotten for me. I learned how to build computers at one point in junior high. Like it's just really funny. But once that computer was put into my room, my whole life changed. Even in the late 90s when that was. So it's just, to answer that question, like my wife and I have talked, but it would be very, very, very minimal phone. And praise God though, like lots of companies are coming out with real minimal phones these days. Even some people are like, well, I want to be able to track my child. Okay, great. Well, there are good tracking devices that are GPS enabled that you can put on wrists that Verizon have built, other companies have built that I think that accomplish that task, which I totally understand. Hopefully that answers that question on the age. I would wait. That would be my counsel. Just wait. It's okay. They can borrow a friend's phone if they need to call you. Maybe this will, if you guys, you have a question?
You know, I know firsthand I don't have social media accounts.
Yeah.
At firsthand, I don't have social media accounts, but I do get feedback from others about the frustration from posts they see. Do you have some advice when you see a post or something like that that's just sets you off? What do you recommend for reaction?
Yeah. So this one, my best answer is I would say something like this. Well, you want to have a biblical response. Right? Now that you could say, well, that's pretty generic. What do you mean by that? Well, I'd want to ask some probing heart questions like, is this thing causing you anxiety? And why do you think it's causing you anxiety? So I shared with you guys a few minutes ago that I was on my way here on the phone about a situation. It's a pretty tough situation. Some really horrible things that were shared online. Of course, someone recorded it, and it got shared around to a bunch of friends. And that is hard. Like, I'm not denying that at all. But I'm also like, it's hard because I feel like we give social media so much power over our hearts when Christ is the Lord. So like, I want people to run to Christ first. That's when I say biblical response. You run to Christ. Lord, this is making me really anxious right now. Right? And it's because they said these 3 hurtful things about me and my friends. And then, I guess just allowing, again, those 3 things, mortifying, putting off the old self, like trying to reject any anger, hatred, those kind of things, right? Like thinking upon the truth of Scripture, what is true right now, and then, of course, manifesting Christ-likeness and living out the reality of my faith in the one another. So, responding with righteousness and those kinds of things. Now, that's a really, I understand it's still a little bit generic, but I don't know if I have more of an answer than being biblical. I will say this. I wish I would have brought it with me. I just got a book this week called Every Moment Holy. And I don't know if you guys have heard about this book. It's a bunch of liturgies. They're basically prayers. But they're prayers for the most mundane things. And one of the ones I was reading was a liturgy for consuming too much information. And it was really just a prayer of I'm overwhelmed right now with what I'm experiencing and seeing. I try not to read a ton of news, but when I do, you just feel tired. You're just right now, it's relentless. There's just so many terrible things. But I want people to respond biblically. And so I guess my easy answer is run to Christ. Run to Christ. This isn't change. Nothing changed in our spiritual lives because it came through technology. It's just the avenue that it's coming. Obviously, there could be a loss of hope. I understand lots of students can even get suicidal and other things because of long-term things they see on social media. Then there'd be more counseling. I think that would be needed specifically to those things. But generically, specifically, I guess, run to Christ. Hopefully that's helpful. I think Jesus knows. And that's not a Sunday school answer, I don't think. Anybody else? Maybe if I can just tell you some things that I do at home, that might be helpful. Number 1, I no longer sleep with my phone next to my bed, right next to me. I no longer do this. For the last probably 18 months, I have not done that. It's changed the way I sleep. Just honest to you. I always plug it in on the other side of my bedroom, and it is always on silent. And the staff at the church knows if they need to get a hold of me, they'll ring me twice, which will go through. But I have it on Do Not Disturb. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And it will not flash. It will not show anything. Almost all your devices have these abilities to put Do Not Disturb on, and I highly, 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 highly recommend it. Lots of time limits and stuff on devices. That's where Circle is something you attach to your router at home that can control the internet. And all of that, I think those are really, really wise things to put into your home. We do that at our house. Again, passwords and everything. We have one computer that our kids can use for homework and stuff. That is in a very public place in our house. I don't just allow my son just on YouTube. YouTube, can I just say one thing on YouTube? If you are browsing YouTube on a computer and you are using Google Chrome, I think I might have put that in that thing. Go download it's a little like, it attaches to Google Chrome. It's called Distraction Free YouTube. YouTube is notorious for people getting lost in endless videos because their algorithm is so smart. It's so smart. In fact, if I can give you a really sad stat, is that okay? Sad stat. It was last year. I read that it was something like 9 times out of 10 when a young girl would go on YouTube to look for how to diet, like she might want to look on just genuinely like interested in dieting, she would end up watching videos on being bulimic. Like, honestly, you want my opinion? That's satanic. That's what I think. So if I can be really strong on that, like that's not good. But the algorithm within 3 or 4 videos is leading her because they know that they'll keep you watching if they keep giving you more sensational things and sensational things. So the algorithms are built this way to kind of feed that side of us. So distraction for YouTube actually removes the ability to show the next video. I just think that's really helpful. Yes?
So just curious, what social media app do you see the biggest problem right now with high schoolers?
Yeah, TikTok for sure. Like, I think TikTok is scary, in my opinion, and I know young people like where you're at on that, but like, there's just lots about, as a company, TikTok absolutely freaks me out. They do not care about laws. Social media companies in general, very few laws regulating social media. You parents in the room that used to watch Saturday morning cartoons, there are laws against what you could be advertised. Like what could come up, because they knew at that time of the day on Saturday, there was kids watching, there were laws in place that you couldn't advertise certain things to children. Those laws do not exist with social media. There's very, very little, that the laws have not caught up with companies. And like, I'm not trying to be weird about TikTok, but like they just absolutely do not care. Like whatever the government, American government is saying, they're a Chinese-run company, they could care less. They're getting in a lot of trouble right now, but there's just so much that's unregulated on TikTok, and it's so fast. Yeah, I mean, if I was ranking them, for sure I'd put TikTok at the top. I'd put Snapchat right below it. They're a little bit better, but they don't want to get regulated. All right, that's how they're making their money. These are $60 billion companies. This is not a small thing. I can go off on this. It gets wild to me, just the stuff you read. Someone earlier was talking about that thing with Robinhood this past week, with Robinhood and people and GameStop, and like there was like 10-year-olds like making millions. What's crazy to me about that is actually, I think it was Minecraft or some of the other like game companies. There's kids that have been going into $6,000, $7,000 and tens of thousands of dollars in debts on their parents' credit cards because they're buying like skins and things and they're trading them online. Kids are legitimately getting addicted, even having gambling problems as young as 10 because they're doing all this stuff online, even before like this thing with Robinhood. It's really interesting to me. There's another book, I think I put it in your packet, called Irresistible. It talks about this from an unbeliever, but it's just stats. It's wild. There's now gaming addiction retreat centers all over the United States. One of the biggest ones is in Seattle, Washington, where all the games come out of. But yeah, none of this to scare you, to make you knowledgeable and to be helpful, just so you know what's going on and you can make the best, wisest decision you can as a parent. Hopefully that answers that. But I wanted to add one thing. All of these apps have private messaging, which is just concerning in general. So all the social media apps, they've all tried to become the one-stop shop for everything you're doing. So with private messaging, everything just kind of goes out the window once you can have that kind of privatized moment on your device. I'm not scared for the future. I want you guys to know, I'm not. I'm actually joyful because that's what Christians are supposed to be, right? We can redeem the time, right? We're called to do that. But I do think we need to be aware. Yes?
Instagram and not, have it private where you can only accept, I don't know. we haven't done it yet, and they're trying to convince me that,
The
to
students
put it on
hate me.
Instagram because our school uses it.
Yeah.
Mom, our class, freshman class does
Right.
this, and it's all on Instagram, and how am I supposed to be able to participate in dress-up days? And I'm like, But
Yeah.
I was thinking, well, maybe if it is private, it'll be okay. But
Yeah.
I'm scared.
Yeah, I'd never want to overstep your role as a parent. Like, I just would want you to be involved in that. Like, and I get, like, students, I don't want you to hate me. I'm for your holiness. That is really my desire. That is my driving desire. And I just think students, like, you're still growing in your faith. You're still understanding what things, in Jim Berg in his book, he calls them designer lusts. I think they are that. I think we have these, like, specific things that's true to my heart that might be different for you, that's different for me and for you. And we have our designer lusts, things that, like, I like that, that's my little thing. And we get comfortable in secret vices with those kind of things. So I'm not completely anti-social media. I'm not. Like, I get its purpose. I have just absolutely in my own life reduced it almost to it's just non-negotiable. I mean, it's not even there anymore. I do have an active Twitter account, just to be really clear. Like, I really enjoy Twitter. I think there's still healthy, good things that are happening in conversations, but I'm in my mid-30s. It's different than a high school student. I do think you can access Instagram without having accounts, though, too. There's lots of public accounts. Even the schools make all their accounts pretty much public. So even right now, I just want you guys to know, when I post, I use Instagram for our junior high and high school ministries at the church. I actually use my computer to post them. I don't use my phone. So I just do things like this just for my own heart. If I can be even just, again, more honest, I was having a hard time preaching to my students and seeing what they were doing on Instagram. Like, I realized I need to just not know right now. I just want you to, like, I had to get to that place because I was like, I know what you were doing last night. And you were like, and maybe that's good that that's exposed, but I realized it was, like, affecting my own love at times where I'm like, actually, Shay, you just need to love them the way Christ would love them and walk with them. So, like, that, again, you're hearing a little bit of me. I'm not anti-social media, but I just think it just needs to it needs to be reduced. Like, by 50% minimum, I don't know. And just time on device. You'll probably hear this in the news more. TOD, time on device. There's good things happening, but the social media companies, they are billions and billions of dollars. This is how they make their money. So they want more eyes. The longer they can get you on there, the better. Let's reverse that trend. Hopefully that answers that question. I don't want to be legalistic on it, but yeah, less. Yes?
Hang on, Jen.
Knowing that social media is such a huge platform and all the parameters, like when you're trying to set some type of guidelines for your kiddos, it's a heart issue, like you said, and then just the rebellion that could come as a result of that. Like, how do you, in your preaching, I guess, with sharing that with the students, because so much of what they do now, especially in their, with school being online, even more so,
right.
Devices that I have absolutely maybe no control over that are given through schools, where we may have parameters at home, but school doesn't. Like, I guess I'm just trying to think, like, when you're talking with your youth group, because it can become like you're a social outcast or piranha almost because you aren't engaged in that, so you feel left out because you're not able or allowed to. Like, how do you approach that as like a youth pastor, and now your kids will probably feel it as a parent?
Yeah, it's a big question. So I recognize your heart, and I appreciate your heart as a mom too. Here's the thing. So I've had some students in our youth ministry that have taken me up on this a little bit, and they've just gotten rid of social media. It's really funny when they get to the other side, like when they break the habit, like the 60-day, whatever they say the time to break a habit. They're always like, I don't even know what I was doing. Like, I just think, honestly, sometimes even just cutting it off for a season. Sometimes people talk about, like a digital fast. like, I think that's wise. I really do. In fact, to your point about like feeling like an outcast, Amy Crouch, she actually addressed that very issue in this book. So I recommend that as a girl. I tend to think that ladies in our youth group struggle with that more because girls are so highly relational. Highly, highly relational. And that's awesome. It's the greatest thing about you ladies, right? Like guys can be just like, okay, you know, like, but then it also like pains them more when things happen online. And so, yeah, I mean, I've obviously sat in my office with young girls, and it's hard. Like, I mean, girls have to quit school sometimes. I've dealt with that, like, because some girls said something online, and it started something on campus. It's like, flows like wildfire. But I tend to think it's because we give it so much power. We allow it the ability to have, in fact, I'll give you, and my wife is going to kill me for sharing this story, but I'm going to share it with you. She won't kill me. We're good. But my wife is on more social media than I am, okay? She just is. And the other day, we were talking about a situation where someone had shared with us that they were pregnant in person. And my wife said that like it was within like minutes that it was like, you know, Instagram official. And she's like, well, I'm glad that they like waited, you know, to tell us because we're like really close with them. And then she's like, but it was just seemed kind of funny. Like it was like right after they told us, like all of a sudden it's Instagram official. And we were in the car, and I go, Bethany, don't give it that kind of power. Like, and she didn't mean it, like she didn't mean it that way. And we had a whole conversation about it. But it's the feeling of like they told us, but it was almost like it was just to get so they could go Instagram official. And I'm like, that's why I don't want to be on Instagram, because I don't care. Can we just be excited that they got pregnant and like it's great, their second kid? Like that's I guess what I'm saying. Like and that's I'm not bashing my wife, please. She like we talk about this all the time. She knows I kind of harp on it, but I want students to find their worth in what Jesus says about them, and so. I just want to continue to inform them that the biggest voice has to be Christ. The biggest voice has to be Jesus, what Jesus says about you. And not, not what someone behind their little screen is willing to get really bold and say. It's amazing how young people, they're so bold behind their screens, but they get in front of people and it's like, well, I'm not going to say anything. That is my like pastoral heart. I don't know if that answers all the ins and outs. I understand that's a part of our lives. Schools are using it, all those things. But what do you need versus what do you want? What is it that you need is what I'd say on that. Hopefully that's helpful to you. That is a hard one, and I don't know if I have all the answers on it. But, less. More face-to-face. More church being the church. One more comment, and I'm done.
No, yeah, that's fine.
One more comment.
I was going to say anything else. Go ahead.
I know I talked about pornography and those things. Porn's a big one, okay? If you want my prediction for the next 5 years, I think distractions is equally as concerning for me as a pastor, equally as concerning as pornography. Because of what it just does to our minds, of just being constantly distracted, unable to focus. You can look at any stats of anything, they're all telling you just where everybody's at. The big promise that technology in the classroom was going to change the world, the pandemic proved that wrong, right? Ain't nobody loving Zoom school. I see you shaking your head, no. I feel you. My students hate it, like, my own kids, this last year, it's so hard. I have a picture of my daughter, Avery, like second grade, on Zoom, and she's like standing there at the computer at our middle of we had to use an extra laptop. She had a laptop, and she's like wearing skates, and she's like on Zoom. And I'm like, this is hilarious. Like, what is going on? She's like zooming, and she'd like skate around. She'd come back to her class. I'm like, oh man, this is not right. It's broken. Anything else? I'm willing to stick around too. You don't want to keep everybody here. There's nothing else, but hopefully that's helpful to you.